Hi, it's Eliana, and today I am going to answer some questions purely from a researcher's point of view. I've been a researcher for 12 years professionally when I had worked in the library fields and universities, doing peer-reviewed research, looking up information to help teachers, students, and sometimes even helping to order books and helping to order periodicals and making suggestions. Periodicals are magazines. This is what I did as work in libraries. I also worked in archives. I worked as an archival assistant, and I was trained to find information. I was trained in library sciences. For 2.5 years, I have a library technician diploma. So this was the legal original job that I was trained to do. That's my educational background. It's a purely library sciences and information technology diploma. I was taught to look how to find research, both in paper format, like the old school, do the research through the books, and also to find research through library media on the internet and through digital periodicals. Those are magazines, digital resources, databases, online digital books, digital media, and how to find answers to the most difficult questions on the internet, to find out rare forums, to search things on rare forums, to search things that are out of print, and to find an answer to a question that cannot be answered. That's what I was trained to do for 12 years as part of my library work, as part of my schooling in that library technician diploma program that I was in for 2.5 years. And I really appreciate that researcher's background in the work that I learned to do through that job. And I went into that job straight out of high school. I went to library school, straight out of high school, library technician. And I did that for 12 years as my legal work. So that's my background as a researcher, working in university libraries, and also working for almost 2.5 years in archives as an archival assistant, archiving data for university libraries and finding data that needed to be sorted and organized in digital format. Now, going forward to where we are now in the present day climate of the secret space programs. What do I believe as a researcher exists really in the secret space programs? Well, I've studied Project Horizon, where the military ordered almost 400 pages of research, statistical research, on how to use V5 rockets, nuclear fusion, to deliver supplies to the moon, to build the first lunar module base underground. That's what they ordered. This was ordered in the 1950s as a huge study for the US military, the Army and the Navy. This was a study ordered. And there's 400 pages on how to use V5 rockets and other type of rocketry, conventional, traditional rockets, to deliver supplies for how to build the first lunar base underground for about 12 astronauts to live on the space for about a year, from what I understand, to live on the base, to set it up underground. And it's supposed to be also a lunar observatory to make sure that there's no threats in space. That's what they were setting up. Then to build platforms for other rockets to land and be launched from the moon, to build several platforms on the surface, to build an observatory, to have a satellite type of a system, radar, to monitor everything from space, not just this lunar base underground. There's also the lunar base program, which was ordered by the military, a secondary study that's 15, 16 pages long, but it outlines the observatory portion and eventually weapons platforms on the moon, having that. So this was going on in the 1950s, 1960s. And it was said that these projects were scrapped and that it was never done, that it was just studies. But I fully believe that they did create bases on the moon, several of them for the US Army, Navy, and military. I fully think that those projects were fully funded and they're live on the moon. Afterwards, they went to Mars, because there's also the Mars project. This is something Wernher von Braun participated in, designing the Mars project. He also contributed to schematics and plans for the lunar base on the moon in the Collier's magazine series, which came out in the 1950s and were out until 1954. And I've studied all those volumes. He also put out a book called The Mars Project and a study paper, The Mars Project as well. How to get to Mars using nuclear fusion rocketry to deliver supplies, to deliver personnel to Mars, and also how to build an orbital space station between the Earth and Mars and the Moon, and how to refuel ships between those points to go to Mars, to explore Mars, to set up base camps, and eventually to set up building bases on Mars. Those were the resources that I was using to study evidence for bases on the Moon and Mars. These are actually published reports and studies, case studies, ordered by the US military and the government. All now declassified in public. Anybody can look at these resources by their names and find it on the internet to study for yourselves. This is the evidence that I, as a researcher, believe that there are bases on the Moon and Mars, and they have advanced technology beyond nuclear fusion rockets. I do believe that they're using anti-gravity craft to now travel from the Moon to Mars and other planets with TR-type craft that are more advanced than the original TR-3Bs that were reverse engineered from crash site alien crafts that crashed on Earth originally in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and beyond in various countries. I do believe that, again, as a researcher, there's evidence for it, like Roswell, New Mexico crashes, crash site retrievals of crafts, and other crash sites. I do believe that's exotic technology that's been reverse engineered. There's evidence for that as well. This is all purely based on evidence, not experience or testimony or anything. I'm purely going by research, what I believe exists as an infrastructure for the secret space programs on the Moon and on Mars, and also underground bases on Earth. There's evidence for that, like Area 51 Cheyenne Mountain, the Raven Rock Complex. There's evidence for anti-gravity craft being produced in those places as well, underground, on Earth. There's black ops operations on Earth. And the secret space programs off-world on the Moon and Mars with various advanced technologies. I also believe there's a time corporation, which is like the time travel police, policing these SSP groups and others, black ops, to make sure they don't get out of hand and they don't destroy the Earth or ruin the timelines. This is what I believe from research and personal experiences. This is my beliefs as a researcher and the research material that has come out from me studying all of this stuff for the last 8 years. 8 years I've been studying it. That's been my work. I've written information on it. I've written 2 books and I'm writing 4 more about this. And some of it is based on my own experiences connected to the secret space program. Half of it is based on research. That's the data I'm putting in together because I'm an experiencer. I was in the secret space program as well, both on the Moon and Mars. So I'm not discounting my experiences. But in the current climate, people are asking for proof and evidence of the real secret space programs and the capabilities. I think they have moon bases and Mars bases. I think they have anti-gravity technology that was and were reverse engineered from extraterrestrial crash sites of crafts, of actual crafts that had crashed on Earth or were planted there specifically for us to find and reverse engineer for many different purposes and reasons, for advancement of our evolution and treaties that were signed with not so positive extraterrestrials that influenced us in ways that have held back things and created secrecy. I do believe that as well. When will this all be disclosed? I'm not sure, but I do think all these infrastructures exist here in the now as programs, as secret programs. I think all of that exists as a researcher and as an experiencer. Now, what I don't believe is that there's people that have the ability to access someone's secret service records or secret space program records from computer systems. If anybody claims that they can access your records from a computer database or their alters can do that, that I don't believe. I don't believe that. That's top secret. Your records are top secret. Whatever organization you work for, whether secret space program or something else, classified organizations, you're not going to get access to records from some person or people claiming that they can go in and access that information from a computer database system. I don't believe that's true. And anybody who tells you otherwise, if you choose to believe that, that's fine. That's up to you. We all make our own choices in what we seek as knowledge and information to learn about ourselves and other information in the universe. Sometimes even through hypnosis, you're able to access some memories from the subconscious field of experiences you have had, like perhaps secret space program, abductions, or something else in the supernatural, in the paranormal world. But that comes from your own subconsciousness, from the deep memories of your subconsciousness. That's what it comes from. It's not actual service records of anything. Those are your own experiential memories that are in the deep subconsciousness that are being brought to the surface. And that's fine to do through hypnosis. That's fine to do through remote viewing and memory retrieval to find out more information about yourself. But those are not legal service records. This is information you're gaining from your subconsciousness of what could have happened to you in your experiences. That's for your personal information and your records that you create yourself from doing hypnosis. I don't discount those records. I don't discount that. I believe hypnosis is a good tool to retrieve information that's deeply hidden in your subconsciousness that could have been erased by certain organizations to make sure you don't remember anything that's classified, that you can't go and create spacecraft, that you can't create zero-point technology. That information could have been erased from your mind if it was there. If you participated in projects that taught you how to do that stuff, or medical things that advance regenerative technology, like reversing the aging process, that can all be erased with blank slating technology and mind wiping. That technology also exists. Mind control technology exists. I've seen it through remote viewing. Remote viewing is another good tool to find out what's real, what actually exists and what doesn't, what's there and what's not. That's a program that was run by one of the three-letter agencies. And I'm sure it's still being used somewhere out there in the military, just not being acknowledged because it's a good tool to find information without being back-ended or backloaded. You have to have a clear blank slate to do remote viewing. You can't go on assumptions. You can't go on knowing what your target is and what you're retrieving. You don't know. You go in to look at a target and bring back actual information and evidence. Not through supposition, not through speculation, not through what you think is there, but what is actually there. You're drawing that, you're writing about it, you're bringing facts from perceptual data when you're looking at a target. Retrieving data and information. Not thoughts and ideas, but what is there. And you're not bringing back what is not there. Same with the subconscious mind. You can only retrieve information that is already in your memories. If you were never a secret space program SSP asset, if that's not in your memories, but somebody else tells you that they went in through some computer database and retrieved your service records, and they tell you some information, and then somebody based on that information goes and does a hypnosis session for you, and none of those data points are there in your subconscious memory. It's blank in the hypnosis session. You can't access any of that data. Perhaps you never had that data in the first place because you were not in the SSP. That could also happen. Just because somebody else told you that they can retrieve your service records of your missions in the SSP through some database online, through an altar, or through whatever means, that does not mean that you were actually in the SSP. It just means that person thinks they can do something. Perhaps they can't. But I don't agree with that type of a toolkit, because nobody has access to your records except the organizations that abducted you into those programs in the first place. They have your records and they're classified, and you're not supposed to have access to that. I don't officially have access to my SSP records where it shows that I worked on moon bases and then Mars bases and space stations. I don't have those records. I don't have the records that I worked for any other organizations as well. I only have what came out of the hypnosis sessions and from memory retrieval, the memory recalls that I have gotten back from my own memories. That's all I have. That's all I've ever said that I have. That came from my experiences and what has come out of my research in my books. Those are my own things that I think are true from the research, what I could find for the origins of the US secret space programs. And I concentrate on the US ones because that's the experience I had originally. But the research is important. Research is the bedrock of disclosure. Remote viewing, hypnosis, doing the actual research work, going out looking for documents to support evidence and proof. Some said I'm speculating. Some said I'm just throwing out ideas. This is what I think. I don't care to use the term speculation or throwing out ideas. People want concrete proof. That proof is classified. That's a fact. If you want the proof, you need to go to Mars and the moon to find the proof. You don't have access to anti-grav tech to go and do that. What we do have access to is research, where we've been told that these projects were scrapped, that they never did them, but I'm sure they did them. I think that these projects were done and bases exist on the moon and Mars, US military, Navy, Army, and other organizations, and corporations as well. I think they have bases on the moon, as well as research facilities underground, bases and research facilities on Mars, and even weapons testing facilities with plasma weaponry technology. I think that is what they have with anti-gravity technology and crafts. That is the reality that I think exists out there as SSP infrastructures on the moon and Mars, and Black Ops on Earth in the underground bases and research facilities. That is what I think are the facts of what currently exists as an SSP infrastructure at this current time in reality. My thoughts, my ideas, what came out of the research. This is what I think. This is what stands for the record of what I currently think and have thought in the past. I wanted to discuss this where I stand on what I think is real and realistic in these secret space program organizations and corporations that are on the moon and Mars. That's where I think the technology is at this point and what exists out there in near space to Earth. Those are my thoughts and what I think as a researcher and somewhat as an experiencer as well. There's also Project Paperclip, where the US government and the military transported a bunch of the scientists from Germany to the US to study all kinds of technology, rocketry, different planetary system stuff. Wernher von Braun was the head of NASA for a while, and then he worked for other corporations for aerospace type stuff. He worked on building schematics for a lunar underground base on the moon. He worked on building schematics for the circular type space stations with artificial anti-gravity. Those projects were featured in Collier's magazine and the Mars Project and his study papers that were submitted to NASA. So Wernher von Braun, I think, was one of the major scientists that contributed a lot to the US secret space program stuff, because he was the chief scientist on that. I don't think it's a coincidence that all those scientists that were transferred from Germany to the US in the late 1940s, 50s to do these projects, to do this work that was classified. And I'm sure they built anti-gravity crafts or helped to figure out how they work. And I find Bob Lazar's testimony that he was working on a reverse engineered craft to figure out how it works in Area 51. I think that's part of evidence. Can it be proved? Can it be backed up? It's based on his testimony. But I did research Project Paperclip. Again, Project Paperclip, and I think it did contribute to the origins of the US secret space programs, to that infrastructure. That is what I think based on the research that I found about that project. And all the various projects, Wernher von Braun was involved for NASA, and his research materials. I think he was the one that contributed to creating the first infrastructure for the US secret space programs, especially on the moon and some parts of Mars project, in what actually is the current infrastructure. And that there's space stations between Earth, Mars, and the moon, already built circular space stations with artificial gravity. I think that infrastructure also exists at this time. They're telling us they're going to be building space stations like that, but I think those were already built between the 1950s to the 2000s. Moon bases, Mars bases, and space stations where anti-gravity craft can dock. Thank you so much, and namaste.